Hi, I'm J. Christian Adams. I'm president of the Public Interest Legal Foundation. Public Interest Legal Foundation is the nation's only public interest law firm litigating exclusively for election integrity. I'm pleased today to be joined by Byrd, the Secretary of State of Florida, to talk about elections. Of course, in Florida, the Secretary of State is the chief state election official, right?
I am. That is correct, and good to be with you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Cord, for joining us. So you, before you were Secretary of State, tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. So I've been a practicing lawyer for about 25 years in Florida, practicing mainly in Second Amendment and firearms law. So that was my area of specialty. And then in 2016, I ran for the state house and got elected, and then was reelected for 3 terms. I did 3 terms in the House, and then when my predecessor, now Congresswoman Lee, decided to run for Congress, she was the Secretary of State, the governor asked me to take on the role. And when the governor asks you to join in, you say yes. There's only one answer. Into the hornet's nest, right? Correct, yes. Yeah.
So where was your legislative district in Florida?
So I represented then House District 11, which was Northeast Florida, Nassau County, parts of Duval County. So that's home, and it's a great district, and really happy to represent the people there. Learned a lot, but I've been involved in elections law for quite some time. I was a poll watcher for many years, including in Palm Beach County in 2000 for Bush v. Gore. So it's been a passion of mine for a long time.
And from a pretty part of the state.
And from a great part of the state,
right,
yes.
Right. So the Florida Secretary of State, you have county officials in Florida that are also involved in elections there. It's not all run out of the Secretary of State's office.
That is correct. So we have 67 counties. So we have 67 elected supervisors of election, and they run the election in the county. So I am not their boss, but I am the chief elections officer, and I can issue advisory opinions or tell them what we think the law means, and make sure that they are enforcing the law.
So the Public Interest Legal Foundation about 6 years ago had a lawsuit against Brenda Snipes, the Broward County Supervisor of Elections, under the National Voter Registration Act. She wasn't cleaning up people who had moved. Incredible incompetence in that office. Florida law has a provision the governor can actually remove these people, doesn't it?
It does, and it's one of the best provisions that we have. And I'm glad you mentioned Broward County, and because really in Florida, we had 65 counties doing it right. We had 2 counties, Palm Beach and Broward, that were the problems. They were the ones causing all the issues. And then Governor Scott removed the supervisor in Palm Beach County, and then when Governor DeSantis was elected, he was going to remove Ms. Snipes, and she decided discretion is the better part of valor and resigned. But yes, the governor can remove supervisors for malfeasance or incompetence.
There's plenty of that going on in Broward County, I promise.
Yes.
Okay, so one of the things I noticed about election night 2022, and if I think about it, 2020 and maybe 2018, is Florida seems to figure out who won the election on election night. What's going on there that's different than most of the country?
Sure, and I think it's one of the best election measures that we have. So our supervisors can start canvassing votes prior to Election Day. So the early vote and vote by mail, those are counted. So when we have that first number that gets reported around 7:30 Central, because we have the panhandle, so that first number on election night is all of your early and vote by mail. That number's in. And then on election night, every 30 minutes thereafter, the counties are required to report the individual precinct data so that we know generally who won on election night. So I think that's what other states could model if they want timeliness, because we require all ballots to be into the supervisor's office by 7 p.m. And I'll give you an example. We had there was a mail truck stuck on I-4, which is around Orlando, that didn't get to the ballots in. And we work very well with the Postal Service, but those ballots didn't make it. They don't get counted. There is no, the mail truck got stuck, it was raining, none of that. I mean, our law is clear. In by 7 are not counted.
And yet another story adding to my list of reasons not to trust the post office with your vote. Not that you shouldn't vote, but I tell you, I hear more and more stories like this. So the other thing Florida does that's somewhat unique, it's not entirely unique, but it's a great idea, is what's called, and remember, a lot of people won't know what I'm about to say, electronic poll book.
Right.
That's something that Florida has done a long time. When I was at the Department of Justice in the voting section, and I would do election monitoring in Dade, in Broward, on election day, I saw like this magic machine that most states don't have, What is an electronic poll book, and how does it help make elections run smoother?
Right. So I still remember being a young voter, and you'd go in, and there would literally be printed pages with every registered voter in the county, and you would sign next to the book, and that was the poll book. Well, after the lessons we learned from 2000, the state started requiring electronic poll books, and so which is just what it sounds like. It's a computer station that's connected to the county office. So it's a one-way connection. It can't be hacked. It's not connected to the internet, but it allows the poll worker in the precinct to look you up right away to make sure. And because we have a centralized database at the state level that all of the counties hook into, we can tell if someone has already voted somewhere else. So it's a great safeguard and tool that we use in Florida.
Here's the coolest part from my perspective watching. People would give their driver's license, because Florida's a voter ID state, and on the back of the driver's license, I think there was a barcode that they would scan through this electronic poll book, and up pops the registration information.
Correct.
There's no like, are you Joe Smith at this? No, it's like lock solid. Here's who you are, milliseconds. And next thing you know, you get a ballot. It's an amazing system.
It's a very good system, and goes a long way to our voter integrity.
So, folks listening, this is one of the things the states that don't have could adopt. Now, there's a monetary investment, obviously, but I'm telling you, it speeds lines, it increases integrity. It's a great system in Florida. Okay, so other things that Florida has, because I do election litigation all around the country. I think I'm up to 32 states now. I've actually had a case in, and Guam. I can't ever forget about Guam. You guys have a statute in Florida that is fantastic for list maintenance, to keeping the voter rolls clean. And it allows election officials to use things like jury recusal forms where people say, I'm not a citizen, get me out of jury duty. Oh, you're not a citizen? Well, that's funny because we got you from the voter rolls.
Right.
And so the statute explicitly allows that. Governor McAuliffe in Virginia vetoed that proposed bill. You also have a third-party information statute, I think, where if the supervisor learns about credible information from third parties, they can use that information. This is great stuff, and it's not in most states.
Right. No, I mean, it's why, I mean, I see my number one job as the Secretary of State and the Chief Elections Officer is list maintenance. And what I think it's important for people to understand, voter rolls change every single day. Someone dies, someone turns 18, someone becomes a felon, someone gets their rights restored, someone moves in state, they move out of state, they move within the state. So every day that is changing. So the supervisors in Florida have a role in list maintenance. The Secretary of State's office has a role in list maintenance. So we have multiple checks that we're constantly looking, and you're right, we look for reliable and credible information. And if the supervisor has that, then they can take somebody off the rolls with due process. I want to make sure we're not purging. We don't do that. We make sure that we have the necessary information that we feel comfortable in removing someone and not disenfranchise a voter.
Right. Now let's talk about breakdowns. Before Governor DeSantis got there, before you got there, one of the things the Public Interest Legal Foundation did is we used Florida's incredibly generous sunshine laws, and we scraped all of the criminal referrals from county supervisors of elections in the largest counties to the state attorney who's supposed to prosecute crimes. And we found about 160 credible criminal referrals, possible election crimes that occurred that the supervisors of election found. And you know how many of those cases were prosecuted by the state's attorneys?
Probably very little or none.
None.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Zero. And you would think there'd at least be one of these. And this is what was going on 4 or 5 years ago. And that's changing now, isn't it, with a proposal that Governor DeSantis made and got through the legislature. Could you talk about that?
Absolutely. So last legislative session, the governor made it one of his priorities to create the Office of Election Crimes and Security, the first of its kind in the nation, because it's true. This is what we saw, that local state attorneys, local prosecutors, for whatever reason, election laws, complex mix of state and federal law, they're inherently political cases. When the loser, if the person who wins, they want to move on and start governing. The person who loses, it looks like sour grapes. But we knew that these cases were out there. And when I was in the legislature and I had my colleagues across the aisle that would say there's no such thing as election fraud because show us the cases that are prosecuted. Well,
Right.
now we're doing that. We're showing them. And so now we have the statewide prosecutor who has jurisdiction and authority so we perform the investigations in my office. We refer those then to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Then they do their investigation and then refer them on to the statewide prosecutor. We just got our first jury verdict last week, so we're starting to prosecute these. We've had others, people that have pled guilty, but we take our law seriously. I mean, I tell people all the time that the surest way to undermine confidence in government is for a government not to enforce its laws. And for whatever reason, people didn't take election law seriously. Well, in Florida, we do. And under Governor DeSantis, we're a rule of law state. And we're sending that message. And it's building confidence in lawful voters and also signaling to the bad guys, think twice before you do this. It's not a wink and a nod anymore. And let's see if I can get away with it.
That's an important part, is the deterrence factor. You mentioned the complexities of election law. State prosecutors' offices are geared toward murder, robbery, crime, rape, kidnapping, all of these things. And election law, I could find the best state prosecutor in Florida, and I could say like 5 words that they won't even know what they are.
Correct.
What is the voter history? What is NVRA? What is what are electronic poll books? I mean, they don't understand the basics, so they don't want to do these cases sometimes. It's not always a conspiracy, is it, to not prosecute?
No, you're exactly right. It's not a conspiracy. I think it's just sometimes they, like you said, they're looking at rape, robbery, murder. Election law is low on that list for them, and I understand why, but it's important to the state, and I'm proud to say that Florida is leading the nation on that issue.
And just so everybody understands, this unique and effective and good idea of Governor DeSantis is not common in most states. In fact, I'm trying to think of what other states have statewide prosecution authority over election crimes. There's not many. As a matter of fact, the Texas Attorney General recently had it stripped from him by a court. So this is a good thing. This is a unique thing. And I want to ask you about the supervisor of elections of Hillsborough County. Because when we did our safe harbor report and asked for all of the criminal referrals that the county election offices made, he indicated to us that, they would never refer an election crime to a county prosecutor. What's that all about?
So, as I said, the statewide are the supervisors of elections. They're elected by the people of their county and ultimately responsible to them. They make independent choices, but that's why we needed that backstop at the state level. We don't have to rely on a supervisor or a state attorney that decides that's not an important issue to them. We take it seriously at the state level, and we are investigating those crimes. We had a report due to the legislature earlier this month, in which we outlined, I actually think it was last month, but we outlined over 2,000 investigations that were initiated by my office into election crimes, which ultimately led to charges in multiple cases, and we're continuing. So we're not leaving it up to the locals to make these decisions, which in many cases are, they know some of the people that are involved in these cases, and for whatever reason don't want to prosecute them.
One more war story about our Broward County lawsuit. It came out in discovery in our case that the Broward County Sheriff was going to Dr. Snipes, Brenda Snipes, and saying, we found these people, they're non-citizens or convicted felons, and by the way, they're on your voter rolls. And she would take the information and do absolutely nothing with it. Do nothing with it. It's astonishing stuff. And, people don't think the defenders of certain people act as if nothing ever can go wrong with an election official who drops the ball.
Right. Well, I mean, listen, in Florida, I use the number 537 a lot, and you probably know what that number is. 537. That was the difference between President Bush and President Gore. Dade County alone, our largest county with 1.5 million registered voters, has over 700 precincts. If there's just one fraudulent vote in every precinct, that's the difference in Bush v. Gore. You multiply that by the thousands of precincts we have across the state. Let's just say there's one fraudulent vote in half those precincts. We have probably 3 times the margin in Bush v. Gore. So it matters. And the Baker-Carter report from 2004, they said a single fraudulent vote undermines the integrity of the entire system. And that's our attitude that we have in Florida.
So going forward, from my perspective, it's almost like Florida's the top of the mountain, right? Because I'm used to seeing nonsense in other states. We could do a whole show with you on how bad it is in 49 other states. going forward, what else is there to accomplish? I mean, what is the, do you guys have any new creative ideas to make it even better?
We do. And so I think that's one of the lessons we learned coming out of 2000 is we don't sit back and think we know everything, that we've always gotten it right. We're constantly working to improve. We look at what the trends are in other states, where we may have vulnerabilities, where we can improve. I'm not going to get out ahead of the governor on this, but we are starting the legislative session the first week of March. So I would say that stay tuned, because we don't rest on our laurels. We continue to improve our laws.
So you brought up the governor, Ron DeSantis. Yeah. He's in the news a lot. Mm-hmm. What's his view of this issue? Is he engaged? Is he disengaged? What is it?
He absolutely is engaged. Election integrity is one of his top priorities. It's been one of the top priorities of his administration. And just for that reason, I mean, everything flows from the elections. If you don't get your elections right in a constitutional republic, none of the other stuff matters. So it is one of his priorities. He's very engaged. When I go into his office, I mean, I better know what I'm talking about and have my facts, because he knows.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, when he was in Washington, he always had good, strong opinions.
Yes, yeah, you know where the governor stands. You absolutely do.
Right. On with Cord Byrd, Secretary of State of Florida. Cord, thank you very much for joining us on Protecting Your Vote. Keep up the good work. People are noticing. It's making a difference. It's really, really a good story, and I'm so glad you joined us today.
Great. Thank you, Christian, for having me on.
Take care. Protecting Your Vote. We'll be back. Stay tuned. Thanks for listening, and lots more great guests in the future. So come back and look for Protecting Your Vote on the podcast. I'm Christian Adams. This is from the Public Interest Legal Foundation. You can find more at publicinterestlegal.org.